What I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Pierre, but I actually know him as JP. So please call him JP. He is a nutrition and fitness consultant. He's actually trained hardcore athletes, like very good, Hollywood celebrities, but he won't talk about it, rock stars, and Fortune 500 executives. He's absolutely amazing. I actually saw him last year with Chef AJ at her conference, and he was doing motion type of exercises, and it was like dropping a Kleenex and picking it up and just doing motion within your life just to keep, young and have everything moving so that when you wake up in the morning, you don't have all those aches and pains. And what I saw, even though I was in a boot and crutches, was absolutely phenomenal, even though I couldn't actually imbibe. He's actually credited as one of the first pioneers for brain building classes. So it's basically to enhance cognitive fitness. So for senior communities, so trying to help everybody live a better life and live a healthy life, which is absolutely fabulous. So he was actually recently inducted into the North American Vegetarian Society Hall of Fame. He continues writing in magazines and publishes things. So I don't want to say much more, but he's got lots of books, The Pillars of Health, Strong, Savvy, Safe, a book about that too. He's absolutely wonderful. I'd probably say top of his game for exercise and fitness and just well-being. And I know eventually he's going to be opening an animal sanctuary. So he's probably one of the most compassionate individuals you'll ever meet. He's just as sweet as can be. So we're going to watch a little clip right now with JP, actually with Ellen DeGeneres. So here we go. Here's JP.
Y'all just kind of move your feet in, out, and just a little zigzag pattern. Relaxed arms. 15 seconds. Smile a little bit. Go ahead and get a jump rope out of here.
You got real sneaky here, and you realize that if it isn't connected, you can't mess up and start over again. So all you're doing the entire time, so you're getting the same benefit.
That's it. Good. 10 seconds. I'm going to stand on my right leg, she's on her right. Her job is to try to pull me off, and I'm trying to pull her off. See this? 30 seconds left. 30 seconds. Now, when he comes forward like that, really give him a yank, because he's off balance. You want a demo? Push up a little crap. Yeah. Whoa. See, look at that. Okay. What my goal is I'm trying to get his flag. Whoa. Lots of smiles, lots of laughter, lots of fun, and lots of movement. Move those hips. Good. Go right again.
That should be
and rest. Good job. Nice. Woo.
Please welcome. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm my second year here, so I think they've only had it 2 years. So I've been here every year. But funny thing is, so I'm out in Boulder, right? That's where I am. But I've been working in LA, so I flew in this morning, got up at 4 o'clock, and I have to fly back to LA. So I don't even get to go home. But anyways, I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much for being here. Some incredible speakers. And thanks to Jerry and Kelly for putting this on. It's so great. And all the volunteers that are helping. And then you guys being here. It's awesome. There's a lot to talk about today. I wasn't here yesterday, so I don't know all the nutrition that was covered by all the experts. So I'm going to cover a little bit on nutrition. I'll try to talk a little bit more about some of the other topics that I cover. But just so you know a little bit about me, I've been teaching vegan nutrition and fitness for over 30 years. I've been vegan for 35 years. And my background really is in geriatrics. So working with celebrities is just a small part of my work. I work with normal people like you and I, but geriatrics was really the core of everything I've done for 25 years. I created the first brain building programs in the United States based on using a plant-based diet and different nutraceuticals for seniors over 25 years ago. Not only did I do mental boot camps, and we'll maybe do 1 or 2 of those exercises today, but I did physical boot camps for them also. And then, of course, many of you saw my partner yesterday and today, probably Chef AJ. We do the Ultimate Weight Loss Program. So that's an online program. And then in about 2 weeks or so, we'll be in Las Vegas for our conference. I do work with a lot of high-speed people, FBI, U.S. Marshals, fugitive retrieval experts. I'm part of Project Child Save, which is a team that rescues kids from trafficking all around the world, actually. And for them, I collect medical gear and food. The kids, when they're rescued, they're terrified, so they each get a toy. We get them a doll, we get them a pair of shoes, and some sort of vegan candy bar I get. And then I support the team. Most of them are Navy SEALs or Green Berets, so we try to send them products to keep them healthy. So I keep pretty busy with that. I've written 2 books. The first one I did when I was training Ellen. It was kind of a funny thing. I was training her one day, and she said, you know, somebody's going to call you to write a book. And I said, oh, yeah, right. And I leave her house, basically, the phone rings. And so luckily I had been taking notes on a book for 25, 30 years, whatever. And so that's called The Pillars of Health. And then my second one is called Strong, Savvy, Safe. And that's a guide for women on self-defense and safety. 1983, when I graduated high school, the 2 oral reports I did in high school one were animal rights and the other one was women's rights. So I've been involved with women's rights and working with abused women for 30 years. So anyways, that's a little bit about me. Today, as I said, I wasn't sure what everything was covered yesterday on nutrition, but I do want to cover a little bit of my take. It may be similar from the other doctors and so forth. But one of the scary things that I've been seeing in my office, I'm originally from Chicago, but I just see client after client. It's like a revolving door coming in with premature aging. So we see people that are 40 years of age and they look like they're almost 60. And they have all the symptoms of all these different types of disorders. I mean, some of them I work with, they can't even get on and off the ground. They might be 100 or 200 pounds overweight. Kids come in my office, 12 years old, 270 pounds. So diabetes, so the extreme, obesity and diabetes together. And then, of course, heart disease. But imagine let's forget the physical diseases they have at that age. When I see kids that are 50 or 100 pounds overweight, could you imagine the emotional problems these kids have? They'll come in my office, sit on the couch, and they just look down the whole time. Their parents are here. They don't even look at you. Their self-esteem is so low. So I see a wide variety of clients, from kids to senior citizens to athletes and everyone in between. But I'm seeing this premature aging. I'm seeing these people, whatever age they're at, they're looking and performing, and their markers inside are so accelerated. And it's really scary. And when I ask for a food diary, when I start looking at what they're eating, the amount of plant matter they eat is minuscule. I mean, most of them are eating animal products. So they're literally getting their plant matter from when they eat their hamburger and there's a piece of lettuce on there or there's a tomato. That's it. And if you look at some of these stats in the United States today, we see that, 90% of our diet, a little bit more than 90, maybe 92%, is animal products and processed foods. So it only gives us a small percentage of our diet that's actually plant matter. And if you really look into the research, you're seeing that the government considers French fries a serving of vegetables, and the government considers a serving of ketchup or tomato sauce a serving of vegetables. So when you look at that percentage, that 8% maybe that we're lucky to get in our diet that's plant matter, let's even drop that down maybe to 4 or 5%. And when we look at the cultures who live the longest, but that's not as important, who have the least disability, we look at their diets and 90 to 99% of their diet is plant matter. They're not eating any animal products at all because they don't have the machinery to make them. But the animal products that they're eating is minuscule. What they would eat, what you would eat, or in America what we would eat for one serving, they would take it and they would chop it up for a family of 4 or 5. So everything else is plant matter. So we're not getting the plant matter in our diet in enough volume. And it's all the antioxidants and these phytochemicals and these micronutrients that are important to keep us young and healthy. Our bodies have our own antioxidant enzymes inside. Big, long, crazy names, superoxide dismutase, glutathione, peroxidase, all these long names, but they're our body's bodyguards. It's the police department, the paramedics, the fire department inside our body. If you're missing one nutrient, then your body doesn't form these. So like, say, glutathione peroxidase, a powerful antioxidant, if you don't get enough selenium in your diet, which is a trace mineral measured in micrograms, very small amount, then you don't form that natural antioxidant. Superoxide dismutase, you don't get enough zinc or copper or magnesium, you don't form that. And if you don't form that enzyme, and ultimately this antioxidant, well, then you start prematurely aging faster than somebody who is. And so most people aren't getting that. Most people have magnesium deficiencies. Well, of course they do. They don't eat enough green leafy vegetables. Of course, that's one of the main sources of our magnesium is green leafy vegetables. And selenium, Selenium and chromium are such tiny, they're measured in micrograms, and they're found in the soil, but our soil's been so depleted of it. And that's, if you were eating a healthy diet, you'd be hard-pressed to get enough of that. But if you're eating a processed diet or animal products, you can almost forget it. So what we do is we need to make sure that we increase the volume of vegetables and fruits in particular, too, in our diet. And most people that I work with, I'm working with executives and normal people like you and I that are rushed. They don't have a time to eat the spinach with a little bit of, steamed lemon on there, and then have some almonds and some blueberries and all this great flaxseed. They don't have the time to do it. So it's very simple. What I do is I just ask them to make a smoothie. It's just so simple because I'm going to take all these great ingredients, right? And Dr. Goldner talked about it already today. I was like, well, she did half my lecture. So, but that's all I do is I ask them, especially like in the inner city. Has anyone ever worked with kids in the inner city? Oh my gosh. I mean, what these children eat, it's even worse than processed foods. It's literally like drugs. It's literally drugs. Kids are doing drugs for breakfast. So these kids are never going to eat the bowl of kale, and they're not going to eat the almonds and the blueberries. But if you can convince the parents to go to the dollar store where they sell soy milk, they sell frozen blueberries, they sell frozen fruit, right? They have some ingredients there. They have frozen spinach. And you educate them and teach them how you can put this in the blender for their child and they can drink it down 1, 2, 3. That's fantastic. Now, there's a lot of physicians in our movement, and they're great physicians. I'm not a physician. They are. And they're anti-smoothie. And I understand it because they don't want this huge hyperglycemic event, all this fruit in your body all at once. I'm not asking you to do that. But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't mind if that happens in the inner city compared to having smoking crack in the morning and eating some Pop-Tarts. I don't care about the hyperglycemic event for these kids. I understand where they're coming from, but there's good, better, and best. These kids we'd be lucky to give them good. Better, forget it, and best they'll probably never get. But if we can get that smoothie in them and you, we're going to get a lot of these antioxidants in. It's interesting. My background's really in the brain. And what's interesting is I see a lot of kids with attention deficit, hyperactivity, violence, all sorts of disorders, impulse disorders, everything. And all these nutrients that we take in, they form neurotransmitters in the brain, right? And if you don't have the right nutrients, just like with these antioxidant enzymes, you don't form these neurotransmitters. If I have a lock and it's 5-15-20 and I punch in or 5-15-19, does the lock open? But I'm only off by one number. I'm 99% there. If I hit a baseball 99% of the time, I'd be the greatest player in history. Because in certain things in life, you can't be off at all. You have to be right on. So you have to get all those nutrients in, and it's impossible to get those nutrients in your diet if you're eating a standard American diet. If you're gobbling down animal products more than a mountain lion. You show me a mountain lion that eats animal products 3 times a day. Doesn't happen. And we're eating it 3 or 4 times a day, and in between eating beef jerky as a snack, right? And then nobody's eating vegetables. So it's all the vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds. It's all those little micronutrients and important nutrients that we need to not only keep our body functioning, but I'm telling you, you've got to keep the brain functioning. Because the scariest disease I've ever seen working in this field is dementia. Once the computer goes here, everything else is going. And I'll tell you the scariest thing. When I'm sitting with a client who has dementia, as much as it's so sad that the client has dementia, who it's hurting the most is who? The family. Tears them apart. Divorce left and right, squabbling, fighting constantly, heart attacks, strokes, people have nervous breakdowns. It's scary when you're sitting with somebody who has dementia and their daughter walks in and they say, I'm waiting for my daughter. Are you the doctor? They don't recognize the person. It's a scary, scary disease. And we've got to do everything we can to protect this big ball of fat up here that's constantly getting attacked by free radicals. And every time you're eating your animal products, high in iron and copper and all these pro-oxidants, and you're not eating your fruits and vegetables, you're just opening up the brain to assault. Does that make sense? The brain's constantly being assaulted, just like our tissues are throughout our body. So the easiest thing for you to do is to make a smoothie. Okay, and I'm going to give you 2 ways we can do a smoothie and a blended drink. Generally what I do, and everyone's different, so I'm not saying that this is a cookie cutter approach. I'm just giving you a basic ideas. We use some sort of liquid. So generally, for most people, depends, but I'll either use coconut water, or I might use a soy milk, I might use oat milk, I use a flax milk, whatever, some sort of non-dairy, or I might use water, it depends. Then I want to put in some of the most powerful fruits that we can put in, which in the United States, within reason, are going to be organic, wild-grown blueberries. So you can buy them frozen at Trader Joe's or Costco or any of these other stores. But if you can get the wild-grown, they're smaller, but they're higher in antioxidants, much higher than regular blueberries. If you can afford it, try to get organic blueberries, because berries are fairly highly sprayed. So they're really not that expensive to get organic blueberries, especially like at Costco or Trader Joe's. They have the organic ones. You can get other berries too. It's just that for the last 25 years, I've been telling people for 25 years to use blueberries for their brains. It enhances neuronal communication. It repairs damage that's occurred in the brain. They're just a really great source of antioxidants. Yes, we could get goji berries and things like that, but in the United States, these are easy to get. Now, I don't want to skip over the organic thing, because if you can't afford it, it's better to have any fruit or vegetable than none. But if you can't afford it, this is important, because when you think of these words, homicide, suicide, genocide, what do they mean? They mean death. Well, what do you think pesticides mean? Same thing. This equals death. These are designed to shut off the central nervous system of an insect, make them infertile, or basically kill them. And we're just big insects. So the more pesticides that you take in, the more that you could, in so many words, you're assaulting your body. So there's certain foods that are higher in pesticides and certain foods that are lower, but berries happen to be one of the higher ones. Now, if you can't afford it, don't worry. There's at least fiber components in the berries, very good types of fiber, that chelate or claw onto heavy metals or toxins and escort them out the body. That's why if you had the choice between not eating organic, right, because let's say, for instance, you couldn't afford organic, just get any fruits or vegetables. Because the difference between fruits and vegetables and meat is there's no animal products in the world that have any fiber. So all those antibiotics and all those hormones and all the arsenic and all the growth hormones and everything else that's in these poor animals that you're eating, there is no fiber. So there's nothing for the fiber that would be in, like, if you eat it with fruits and vegetables, at least it can grab onto some of them and kind of, it basically holds onto them and escorts it out the bowel. Okay. So don't worry if you can't get it, but do your best to get it. Okay. If I could afford it, and even though people think I earn a ton of money, I don't. Most people can afford it, because I go to Costco and I go to Trader Joe's and I look for sales too. And if I find it at a farmer's market, I buy berries in bulk and wash them and I put them in my freezer. So it's really worth the investment. So we have some sort of non-dairy liquid. We have blueberries in there. If you want to use strawberries, that's fine. Or boysenberries, that's fine. There's nothing wrong. Any type of berry would be good. Then we want to put in some sort of seed. Generally, as Dr. Goldner was talking about, we need ultimately to get this omega-3 in our diet. The architectural structure of these cell membranes is a phospholipid. We've got to make sure that stays pliable. It isn't rigid. You know, when people are eating hydrogenated fats and things like that, disastrous for your cells. So we want to get flaxseed in our diet. Now, you'll probably, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but you never, ever, 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 ever buy flaxseed that's ground. You don't buy ground flaxseed. You grind your own flaxseed. There's a big difference, because as soon as it's ground, it starts oxidizing if it's on the shelf. So you go home, you take your Blendtec or whatever blender you use, you put your flaxseed in there, maybe a pound of it, 30 seconds, and then take that and store it in the refrigerator or freezer. Okay, then we've kind of shut it off, so it's not oxidizing, okay? And then you start out, if you're not used to high fiber diet, especially flaxseed, you start out with a 1/4 teaspoon of flaxseed, okay? And then you work your way up a half, then a whole, till we can get to about 3 teaspoons, which would be a tablespoon. The reason why you start out slow with flaxseed, I learned very quickly working in retirement homes, senior centers, and adult day care centers, flaxseed is a very, let's say, moving experience, okay? So you start out slow with it, very slow. So just start adding a little bit at a time till you get to about a tablespoon, okay? So we've got our flaxseed. You could use chia seed too. That's good. It's just that flax generally, not only the lignans in there, but it's our basically our highest source of ultimately getting us to those omega-3s. But chia seed's good too if you want to use that, if you want some variety. Chia seed's nice because when it hits water, it kind of swells. So it makes things a little bit thicker too. So if you're eating a smoothie or drinking it, it kind of sits in you a little bit longer. Could you use another seed? Yeah, you could. You could use, maybe we'll talk about seeds and nuts later, but I would generally stick to flax or chia seed, blueberries, and some sort of non-dairy. And then the bulk of what we're trying to put in that, of course, is our vegetables. Because remember, we're not trying to make a Slurpee unless you need to have a Slurpee. If that's what it takes to eat the smoothie, I don't care. Make a Slurpee, add lots of fruit and a little vegetables, but eventually start adding more and more vegetables because that's where all those micronutrients are found. Okay, and we don't necessarily want our blood sugar shooting up and have this rebound hypoglycemia all the time. So generally, what I recommend is it doesn't matter if it's kale or bok choy or Swiss chard or whatever type of greens you like, but try to get a variety of them. And here's kind of a tip or a trick. If you always go to whatever your health food store is to buy your kale, once in a while buy your kale from a different store because oftentimes they go to different farms to get the kale. And each farm has a different what in the soil? Yeah, it's different levels of nutrients. So certain farms will be higher in selenium and chromium than in other farms. So try to get a variety of that in your diet. So what I do is I'll generally go and I'll buy from this farmer's market, this vendor, and then maybe next week I'll go to the other vendor. So I get a variety of them. And sometimes I'll go to Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or whatever, wherever I go. Does that make sense? So get lots of greens in there, a little bit of seeds, some sort of fruit, preferably berries, and then a non-dairy milk. And then if you need it sweeter, go ahead and add a date or two. Dates are next to an egg fruit. Dates probably the sweetest fruit you can consume. Just make sure to take the pit out, but they're super, super, super sweet. So you could add a couple dates in there and that's fine. Some people say, I like bananas there. I don't care what you put in there, as long as it's going to make you drink it. I have clients that'll say, what if I put, they love to do this to me. What if I put sugar in there? I was like, well, go ahead. I don't care if you put bourbon in there. Whatever it's going to take you to drink your smoothie. Because you're giving me all these vegetables and fruits and seeds, and you want to play a game with me and say, I'm going to put sugar in there, and I'll eat it. Okay, I don't care. Because I know you were going to eat sugar anyhow. So it doesn't matter. Ideally, about 70% of that should be vegetables and 30% fruit. That's kind of ideal. Now, let's say you don't want to do a smoothie. That's not a problem. We're just going to make a blended soup. Okay, that's part two. And here's how simple this is. This is going to freak you out. I mean, I should be a chef, and this is so simple, it's unbelievable. I usually put AJ to shame, by the way. And people think she's the chef. It's really JP. So here's how simple it is. Make sure to write these down. You're going to pick 3 frozen vegetables. And I'm just going to give you 3 that work great. Spinach, peas, or corn. Corn technically is a grain, but whatever. And all I do is I pick one of those. So which one do you want to pick? You're going to pick corn. So we're going to take our frozen corn, put it in a pot with 3 cups of water, and steam it up. Just heat it up. Once it gets hot, I'm going to take that corn, I'm going to put it in my blender with 1 avocado. 30 seconds later, I've got cream of pea soup, and I haven't even started. Okay, there's my cream of corn soup right now. Or I could be cream of pea or cream of spinach or whatever. But I have my cream of whatever soup you want. And I use the avocado. If you don't want an avocado, then I use a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of sesame tahini. Okay? Blend it 30 seconds, and I'm just starting. That's just my base. I didn't spice it up yet. I didn't even add any greens. So normally when I do that with the corn chowder, by the way, is phenomenal. I'll add some sort of green in there, whatever it is, if it's kale or bok choy or rapini or something like that, and I blend it up. And then maybe I'll add, if I wanted a little sweetness in there, I might put in some beet or some carrot, okay? And then I pour it into my bowl, and then I have my seasoning, whether I use garlic or paprika or cayenne pepper, it doesn't matter, it's whatever you like. Now, if you're trying to lose weight, all I do is I do the same thing, I put my corn in there, but the difference is on the back of the stove, I was steaming vegetables. So now I take 3 cups of steamed vegetables and I put them directly in my soup without blending. Why don't I blend them?
Because you get more, it takes longer to chew.
Yes, good for you. You were here last year, I think, too, weren't you? It does take longer to chew, and the secret to weight loss, well, there's many, but one of the things is the slower you eat, basically your brain starts getting a signal, I'm getting full. So when you eat hot soup, it's hot, you eat it slow, and then you're chewing and you're chewing and you're chewing and you're chewing. That's what we want. Now, who do I positively not want to blend for? There's 2 groups of people that I don't want them to eat slow. Exactly. Children, I don't want them to eat slow. I want to it's like a smoothie. So I'm blending everything. In senior citizens. Now, senior citizens, they can't masticate very well. They don't chew well, right? And the whole idea of blending is we're opening up that cell wall and we're allowing all those nutrients to get available to your body. So that's why blending for basically everybody is good. But for senior citizens it's life-saving because they don't have good chompers, many of them, and they have poor hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes, so they don't do real well trying to extract nutrients out of, particularly vegetables and sometimes grains. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's basically the two things that you could do, and that would increase the volume of vegetables and a little bit of fruits and sometimes seeds you get in your diet. Does that make sense? Now, one thing I would ask you to do is try to start using spices. The more spices, the better. Because spices originally weren't for flavoring. They were to preserve foods from basically what? Exactly, yeah. They're so high, like oregano is antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, just like garlic and onions. I mean, this is powerful stuff. So these spices, forget them as flavoring agents. You're taking them medicinally. Okay, so that's why you want to start experimenting with more spices all the time. Now, the one spice that I use quite a bit is I do use turmeric a lot. Some people say turmeric, but just make sure when you use it, always add black pepper to it. And I've been talking about this substance, piperine, inside black pepper for 15, maybe even 20 years, that it enhances the availability of these curcuminoids inside the spice. And it does it with other ingredients too, but always when you take the turmeric, add a little bit of black pepper. So if you add a teaspoon of turmeric, try to get about 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper in there. Black pepper is the one that seems to work. It's not cayenne pepper. Yeah, and it's interesting because sometimes I'll say to people, put blueberries in your smoothie, and they'll say, well, I'm allergic to blueberries. Well, I've got a solution. Then don't eat blueberries. Okay? If you find you're allergic to something or it doesn't work for you, that's called don't use it. So that can be with anything. So anyway, so that would be, just start experimenting with different spices. I personally, myself, I use a lot of essential oils. So on my site, if you go to, write this down because in case I don't put it at the end, but livingwithharmony.org, that's my animal sanctuary site. There's a tab on there called Shop. Now, we don't sell anything, but I put all the products that I personally use on there. And then when you click on them and you order them, our animal sanctuary just gets a credit. So a company will say, hey, they ordered the turmeric, we'll give you $1. That type of thing. So we don't sell, but it's all the products that I personally use. Okay, so I'm not sure what all the doctors covered on nutrition, but I do want to mention that aside from getting these blended salads in or the smoothies in, make sure you're getting a handful of nuts or seeds in. It doesn't have to be every day, but there's been so many benefits. There's been at least 7 major studies done on the benefits of nuts and seeds. And remember that vitamin E is a very important fat-soluble vitamin that's a powerful antioxidant. And it's really hard to get unless, avocados it's in, but it could be in some whole grains. But when we get nuts and seeds, it's a nice blast of that vitamin E in there. And the other thing is that it's a good source of minerals. Like probably the hierarchy of nuts, I would really say really focus on Brazil nuts because Brazil nuts are our best source of selenium. And it's hard to get that selenium. So a couple Brazil nuts a week is fine. I would say walnuts would be another good one in terms of ultimately creating that omega-3s in your diet. And, peanuts are not really a nut. They're a legume. They're not bad. They do have resveratrol in there just like red wine does or grapes. But the main problem with peanuts is there's a type of mold in there, aflatoxin in there. So you can get peanuts or peanut butter that's aflatoxin free. But any nut or seed within reason, as long as it's not roasted and salted, you want them raw. And even better than that, of course, if you were to sprout them, that even magnifies the nutrition and the digestibility of it. That'd be great too. But nuts or seeds in. And now here's the thing. Chef AJ and I work with a lot of people who are food addicts. Ultimate weight loss, there's lots of people who have food addictions. So I'm just telling you up front, we don't really recommend to people who have food addictions basically nuts because where you could eat 2 or 3 nuts, as soon as somebody has a food addiction, there's a whole can or whole bag done. So with them, we generally will use ground flaxseed or chia seed because generally most people aren't going to overeat on ground flaxseed, right? Let's be honest. They could have that at the emergency room to induce vomiting. It's not very tasty flaxseed. So no one's going to just start spooning it in. So if you are one of those people that need to avoid nuts, you can still get those omega-3s, obviously, from the best source. Best source from nuts, from seeds, flax. But purslane, a green, is a weed, actually. That's a really, really great source. And so is sachi ichi seeds, if you've ever had those. Those are one of the high sources, too.
You don't have to ground chia seed, right?
No, just the flaxseed. The flaxseed has a diamond coating on it. If you've ever eaten flaxseed, like there's a cereal called Uncle Sam's that has whole flaxseed in it. If you eat it, most people, you'll see the flaxseed pass through. It has to be ground. Or it could be sprouted, but grinding it works great. Okay, so get those nuts and seeds in. Now, what type of fruits and vegetables? You know what? Let's just make sure we get a variety, but do focus on getting some cruciferous vegetables in. So you want to make sure you're getting the broccoli. You want to get the kale and the Brussels sprouts, the cauliflower. You want some sort of cruciferous vegetables because those generally, most of the science is showing us those have the best anti-cancer properties, especially when they've been blended or chopped and allowed to sit for a while. You know, there's different enzymes in these things. Like if you have a piece of kale, you have this glucosinolates in there, these antioxidant components, and then enzyme myrosinase. Well, when you chew them or chop them, the myrosinase interacts with this glucosinolates, and it creates a whole nother different thing called isothiocyanates. It's kind of like those glow sticks. When you crack them in half, it's a liquid that combines, and all of a sudden it glows, but it doesn't happen unless you crack it. It's the same thing with these cruciferous vegetables. It's beneficial to chop them a little bit and let them sit out for a while, and then they kind of create a whole nother compound. So you do want to make sure you're getting cruciferous vegetables, and any vegetables within reason are generally fine. You know, I wouldn't, there's, you know, I know a lot of people go on Dr. Greger's sites and they want to find what's the absolute best one. The best one is the one that you are willing to eat. Okay. It's kind of like exercise. People say, what's the best exercise? I don't know. It depends. What are you willing to do, and what issues do you have? You know, there's lots of vegetables that maybe you're allergic to, or fruits like strawberries. Well, I'm sorry. If you're allergic to strawberries, yeah, there's certain things that'll get different antioxidants in strawberries that will, if you can't have it, will give you something different. Okay. So get those in. Make sure you're getting, you don't have to eat grains if you don't want to. Grains are not necessary, but you do need to try to get some starch in. So like something like if I was on a deserted island and I can only pick one food, I'd pick sweet potatoes. Because it's pretty ideal food. It's a great starch. It's going to make you full. It's got the carotenoids in there. It's got protein in there. By the way, protein, everything that grows from the earth has protein. So even a banana has a gram or so of protein. So you don't have to panic about protein. No doctor here at this conference has ever seen protein deficiency unless the person's not eating enough calories. If they're anorexic or bulimic or something, not taking in calories, anyone would get. Not only do they have protein deficiency, but they have ascorbic acid. You know, they have scurvy deficiency, pellagra, all these different vitamin B3, all these different things. Does that make sense? Okay. And then make sure that if you don't like sweet potatoes, then maybe try squash. But try to get some sort of starch in there. Or you could go with probably one of the most ideal foods in the world, which almost all the blue zones eat, which are legumes, beans, peas, or lentils. So I pretty much use hummus quite a bit on everything. So what I do is I just either make it fresh with beans in my Instant Pot, or I just take 2 cans of organic garbanzo beans. I rinse them, put them in my blender. I add a little bit of lemon, a little bit of garlic, and I also add oregano, a carrot, and beet. And then maybe I might add tahini. It depends. I blend it and I make one batch, and then I take 2 more cans. So I make a huge amount of it and keep in the refrigerator. And that basically becomes my salad dressing. I add it to soups if I want to thicken up a soup. I might add it to a spread if I'm using nori. And by the way, you should use some sort of sea vegetables in your diet because a lot of vegans, plant-based people don't get enough iodine in their diet. And not so much in the United States, but it is the #1 cause of mental retardation around the world is iodine deficiency. And as vegans, we can be a little bit low in iodine. And, you know, Chef AJ and I are not encouraging any salt, I should say. And so we don't have our clients using iodized salt. So really, it's very hard to get, you know, enough iodine today. So sea vegetables are basically the highest source around. Just be careful if you're using kelp, because kelp is very high in iodine, especially kelp powder. You don't just pour it on. You just use a pinch of it. We need about 150 to 200 micrograms of iodine a day. Okay? So I use hummus pretty much on everything. Now, you don't need to make hummus with garbanzo beans. You can make it with any bean, right? It's just not traditional hummus, but you can grind any bean. And since it has a resistant starch in there, it's so great for weight loss because you're not absorbing or taking in all the calories. If it says 200 calories from whatever garbanzo beans or red kidney beans, you're not taking all that in because there is resistant starch that's resistant to you basically absorbing that. So beans, if you can't handle them, well, that's fine. But a little trick to handling them, and this may sound crazy, but I have my clients start out with 2 beans. And they're like, what do you mean 2 beans? I say, yeah, 2 kidney beans. And then see how you feel. I feel great. Okay, tomorrow, 3 kidney beans. 4, 5, 6. And we just keep building up. Let your gut get used to it because your gut's not used to that. And then if kidney beans don't work, try a different bean. Try sprouting the beans. Maybe try lentils. But here's the thing. There isn't a particular, what we call limiting amino acid in legumes called lysine. And lysine is a very important amino acid that many vegans are low in. Because if you don't consume legumes, it's hard to get lysine unless you're eating a lot of quinoa. And lysine does a lot of different things with protein synthesis and calcium absorption. But there, as I alluded to earlier, there are different substances that get created in the body from different nutrients. And like lysine, well, that would create L-carnitine. And L-carnitine is an important nutrient that is really important for the heart. Actually, carnitine comes from the Latin word carnis, so it is from meat. But in the vegan diet, we get it from legumes. And when you start taking lysine, methionine, pyridoxine, niacinamide, iron, and vitamin C, then you form carnitine. Your body makes its own carnitine. And carnitine helps shuttle fatty acids through the mitochondria. It helps reduce ammonia. It's an antioxidant. So it does important things. So if you're not getting lysine from legumes or quinoa, you're going to be low in lysine most likely. And then a whole host of issues can happen. So you do need to be careful. As I said, it's important that we get a variety of nutrients because you don't want to be off by one. And particularly in the brain, you don't. Something like pellagra or vitamin B3, niacin deficiency, that can cause a lot of anger and hostility, mental confusion, skin problems. And this, when you start looking at kids in the inner city and they're gobbling up sugar by the bucket load, average person consumes 150 pounds of sugar in the United States a year. 150 pounds, it's more than I weigh. Every time you're eating sugar, in order to turn sugar into energy, you use nutrients, and one of them is B vitamins. So now all of a sudden you got all these kids eating 150 pounds of sugar a year in the inner city or here, and all of a sudden now they don't have any B vitamins, so now all of a sudden hostility, anger, irritability, all these different things occur just because they're missing one nutrient. Does that make sense? So there's certain foods that you take in that are anti-nutrients, and sugar is one of them. It's an anti-nutrient. You're going to lose magnesium. You're going to lose chromium. Chromium is a cofactor with insulin. Magnesium controls over 300 different bodily functions, enzymatic functions in the body, and one of them is ATP production. ATP is the energy currency of the body. You're low on magnesium, you're tired. When you're tired, what do you go for? Sugar. Now what happens? You lose more magnesium or you gain magnesium? You lose more. So it's a vicious cycle. So that's why when you look in prisons and when they do blood tests and you see these prisons, these guys in prison are low always in omega-3 and zinc, all the things that are important for brain functioning, and they control, your neurological functioning too. So is it any wonder that half these people are violent? Right? It's all because of our nutrients or lack of them. Does that make sense? So I don't know if this was all covered, so I'm sorry if some of this was covered or not. We could go on with nutrition, but I have a lot of other things to go. What do we have, 3 hours left for me? What time did I start? 2:30? 20 minutes. Oh, my gosh. Okay. You can ask all the questions you want. I never get... Sea vegetables. Okay, anything but hijiki. The hijiki is high in arsenic. So I use kelp, but I use a pinch of it. I use the powder. And then I use nori all the time because I basically take so I make my salad, and then I add my hummus to the salad, and then I mix it up. So the salad, if I was to lift it up, it's stuck to the hummus, right? So the leaves don't fall out. And then I take that and I put it in my nori. Nori looks like a piece of paper, and then I roll it up and I eat it like a sandwich. Now, if you want more calories, then you can just take a ciabatta, a flatbread or something, and roll it up that way, or you can just eat it that way, whatever. But my favorite sea vegetable, I don't have a favorite one because they're all different, but I stick most of the times to wakame, nori, and kelp. Okay. Anything else? I'm sure the doctors covered all this, but I just ethically, I want to say it. We got to make sure 100% of the time, non-negotiable, that you're taking B12. Okay. I've been to raw food events, right? Where I'm like the only guy, the best raw fooder in the world are hiring. And, these are the best people in the world, and they're not taking B12. And they don't wash any of the produce, and they think that's their source of B12. There's spider webs on there, and I'm not kidding. There's spider webs on the stuff. And I was like, yeah, no, I'll take a pass on that. It's a microorganism in the soil. 100 years ago, you had dirty nails, you ate B12 in your mouth. You drank well water, B12, right? We don't have it today. We're a sterile society. B12, permanent neurological problems, same symptoms as dementia. So if you present these symptoms to your physician and they're not really astute, I'm not saying your physician isn't smart, but in case they weren't, and if they weren't running like an MMA test, they're testing your levels in your body, they may say, Mr. Jones, you have beginning stages of dementia. We're going to write you a script for Aricept. Where if they gave you an injection of B12, you pop back to normal. Tingling in your toes and your fingers, a good warning sign. But you don't want to be messing around B12 deficiency. Don't worry. Cyanocobalamin, methylcobalamin, hydroxycobalamin, don't worry about it. Just get some sort of B12, 500 micrograms a day. Don't read all the articles and go to the websites and say, this doctor said 2,500 micrograms a week and this doctor said 3,000. That's silly. I mean, that's like saying the difference between should you eat 6 nuts or 4.5. It's like, come on, don't worry about it. About 500 micrograms a day is great. Yeah. Yeah, well, you could, in theory, if you want to listen to certain research, they'll say maybe take 2,500 micrograms a week. But it's like brushing your teeth. When you brush your teeth, take your B12. It's easier because then people don't forget. Yeah. And don't worry about the different types, okay? It's not worth the argument. It's not worth it. There's too much arguing in our thing, and then people get too neurotic about everything, It's like this argument about smoothies and about nuts. It's like some people, and I'm not kidding you, they literally will debate 6 nuts versus 3 nuts. Are you kidding me? I mean, seriously? I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, civilizations have been living fine without debating stuff like that. Okay. So B12 is critical, making sure you get sunshine, some form of vitamin D. Where's vitamin D? When people drink milk, the cow isn't giving you vitamin D. It's artificially put in there, right? So when they say, I drink milk to get vitamin D, well, it's synthetic. They're adding it. So the only way we get vitamin D within reason is from the sun. So if you're not getting sun, you're like a normal person that lives inside. I'm not saying it's good. You're not getting sun exposure. So I hope you're getting some sort of vitamin D. They do make a vitamin D3 now. That is from mushrooms or lychee. So they do make a vegan, they do make vitamin D3. You can also get ergocalciferol, which is D2. So that's fine too, but some sort of vitamin D. Generally, if you want a number, it's usually 2,000 to 5,000 international units a day. And also it should be taken with fat because it is fat soluble. A lot of people on the raw food program, if they're not eating nuts and seeds or avocados, they're taking vitamin D12 or vitamin D supplements, and then they test low. Yeah, because it's fat soluble. You gotta have some fat in your diet to absorb it. That makes sense? So B12 and D are critical. The omega-3s, that's debatable. My personal opinion on omega-3s is if I see people who have cognitive issues, because omega-3 and particularly the DHA is important for brain development. I mean, babies who don't get breastfed, they don't get DHA, or they don't get bottle fed that has DHA added. They get retinal and brain abnormalities. So we know that it's important for brain and retinal. So my personal opinion, and as I'm not a doctor, of course, is if I see clients that aren't doing really well cognitively, and they're doing flaxseed and chia and greens and all that, and their body has to attempt to convert that into DHA and EPA, the longer chain, some people don't convert well, or they have metabolic issues. So I ask them to take an algae supplement that's a DHA. And a lot of times I have lots of clients that pop back and they feel great from it. So it's not going to hurt you. It's just derived from algae. But those would be 3 big ones, the omega-3s, vitamin D, and B12. Could we go into iodine? Yeah, there's lots of other things, even calcium, when people aren't, or minerals in general, zinc in particular, if they're not doing enough variety of foods. But anyways, I don't want to talk only about nutrition because I don't have a ton of time on here, unfortunately. I get warmed up after about 4 hours, so you can understand that an hour I got to move quick. So let's move on quickly to exercise or movement. Here's the challenge. And all you have to do right now is everybody in this room, well, everybody but 2 people, look at what you're doing at this moment. You're sitting. And I've said for a long time that sitting is the new smoking. And this morning I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning, got ready, took a quick Uber to the airport. And then what did I do when I got to the airport? Because everybody was sitting. All I did is walk. I walked and I walked and I walked. I carried my bags and I walked and I walked and I walked because I knew I was going to get on a plane for 2 hours and sit again. And then I knew it'd take an hour ride here. And then I knew at an event, well, I'm not going to, but generally you sit. You can't do that. You see, it doesn't work this way, gang. You don't get to go to the gym for an hour in the morning and do your exercise. And then the rest of the 23 hours in the day, you're either sitting like this or you're going like this. Think about primitive people. They're moving all the time. Your body runs on movement. You couldn't stick a pin in the body without touching lymphatic fluid, right? And your lymph fluid is your immune system. And you've got these beautiful lymph nodes, particularly in your chest and your groin region here. Think about it. Your heart pumps blood throughout the body and it moves throughout the blood vessels, but your lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. So it relies on deep diaphragmatic breathing, deep tissue massage, or movement. Every time you bend, you squat, you push, you pull, you're moving lymph fluid. Get this, when you do this for 8 hours a day, here's the lymph nodes here, you don't got any movement. So your body's trying to get rid of the bacteria and viruses and fungi. They're not going to do a good job. Why do you think senior citizens or anybody who goes into a hospital and lies in a bed forget it. They're goners. Your immune system shuts down. Your body, every time you do a movement, you bend, you squat, you push, you pull, you reach, whatever, it's like taking a key and putting it in the body. You're turning something on, whether it's your bones, right? You're not getting any stimulation here with your bones right now. Your bones aren't getting any stimulation at all, zero. So what happens is the bones say, I'm not really needed. I'm not going to grow. It's like your brain. You don't want to use it, you lose it. When you look at professional tennis players that hit a ball 8 hours a day, the ulna and the radius bones here are thicker than the non-dominant hand because of all the stress. So your body responds from exercise stress by adapting and getting stronger and more efficient, just like your heart. The more that you're walking, your heart gets more efficient at pumping. The more you lay down in a bed, your heart atrophies and it doesn't work well. So it doesn't pump blood. If it doesn't pump blood, you don't get blood to your brain and nutrients and oxygen, you don't think well. It's a vicious cycle. Same thing with your immune system. Immune problems are a big, serious problem today. Where the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed, you're being assaulted all day by poisons in the air and the water and the food. You got to do everything to protect your immune system. Exercise or movement is one of the things that does that. So bones, immune system, your heart. What about your moods? I've been working with abused women for 30 years. I've never met one of those women that wasn't depressed, most of them have post-traumatic stress disorder, have all sorts of issues cognitively. Guess what? I don't sit at the office with those clients. I take them out walking. I want them to see sunshine. I want them to see green. And I want them to do this. I want to get oxygen going. I want circulation going. And they start feeling better. You've got, for your moods, if you want to get your moods feeling better, you need circulation and oxygen. And if you exercise aggressively enough, you start releasing those endorphins. And those endorphins are the feel-good chemicals that make you feel high and they reduce pain. So if you have arthritis and you feel depressed and you start exercising fairly aggressively, you release these. So it's non-negotiable movement, but you don't have to go to a gym. But if you do go to a gym, I'm sorry, you're 1 hour in the morning. God bless you for doing that, but I'm concerned about those 23 hours. So there's something called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, NEAT, N-E-A-T. And it basically just means what are all the movements that we get in throughout the day that are not at the gym. We call that the fidget factor. So when you're sitting here right now, that's fine. But what you could be doing is this. You could be just opening up a little bit. You could be doing this little things that add in throughout the day. Just tiny, tiny little things, but they add up throughout the day. The only thing I would suggest you buy, and you don't even have to do this, I can show you how to do without it, is an exercise band. Okay? When I was at the airport this morning, I was walking and walking and walking and walking and walking, and then I started doing some exercises with my band. There's no exercise at the gym that you can do that I can't do, my band. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what it is. So if you're doing curls with weights, my body, just like your body, doesn't care if I'm lifting metal weights, if I'm lifting cans of beans, if I'm lifting water, or if I'm just going against resistance. I don't even need a band. But your body wants to be stressed. Okay? So the time to use this stuff is when you're at home watching TV, right? I had a client come in my office in Chicago. It was very sad. She walked with a cane. She wasn't that old, but she was morbidly obese. And I gave her some exercise bands, and I gave her a protocol. I showed her what I wanted to do. And I said, but here's the trick. You're only allowed to do these exercises when the commercials are on TV. And she said, well, that's it? I said, yeah, that's the only time I'm allowing you to do them. 3 days later, she calls me. She said, hey, JP, I wanted to let you know, you gave me the exercise bands, and I've been following your protocol. And I think you tricked me. And I said, why is that? She goes, you know how many commercials are on TV? So she's watching 3 or 4 hours of TV a day, right? That's 15 minutes of commercials. So if you're watching 3 hours of TV, that's a 45-minute workout when you're watching TV. So anytime you're at home and you're watching TV and the commercials come on, you get out your set of weights, you get out your bands, whatever. But let's say, for instance, you can't do push-ups. And a lot of people can't. I just put the band behind my back, and now I do push-ups. No difference, just less load. All I have is less load here, less resistance, right? Same thing. As I get fitter, I can double this band up, right? So now I have more resistance. And then as I get fitter, I might do a push-up off a counter. And as I get fitter, I might do it off the table, down here, a chair. Then I'll do it on the floor. Then when my clients get really fit, I put the band around them here, and I have them do it off the floor this way, right? So there's nothing you can't do with this band here. There's no exercise at all you can't do. It doesn't matter what it is. If like I do with my clients, I hook it around them, and they're this, and I'm behind them holding it. So I hold it, and they're going to run 50 yards, and I'm just giving them resistance. So they're running now, but against resistance. Okay, so there's everything you can do with this, but the point is, forget the band. The idea is you need to move. I don't care if you take 2 cans of beans. I don't care if you do Tai Bo. I don't care if you do jazzercise, but you've got to move throughout the day. It's the accumulation of movement that's important, okay? Think about a bank account. Every time you move throughout the day, you sneak something in. So somebody's in the back now, and they're just moving like this. At the end of the day, that fidget factor add up not only to burning calories, but just to keep the circulation going and keeping you fit. There's a biomarker. There's many different biomarkers of aging, but one of them is your ability to get up and off the floor. Okay. Now I'm 53, so I work with kids that are 18. They cannot do this. So all I'm going to do is just sit down. So I'm just sitting down nice and slow. Okay. I'm going to sit down, and then all I'm going to do is get up. Okay. You don't have to do that, but you have to be able to get at least to here, and then somehow get up. You have to be able to have the ability to get up off the floor and get up. Now, how do you think you get good at that? Practice. When do you practice? When the commercials are on. Get on the floor and get up off the floor. That's it. I mean, I have clients that are celebrities that are paying me a lot of money, and that's what I have them do. Yeah, it's no trick. It's a very effective exercise. Get on the floor, get off the floor. And eventually I put them in a Superman position, flat or on their back, and then they got to get up. But it's a beautiful exercise because everyone should have the ability to get down or be comfortable here. If I go to Indonesia, this is what I see 80 and 90-year-old people doing. This is how they eat. This is how they play games. This is how they talk. This is how they go to the restroom. And people say, wow, it's because they're Asian. No. Not because they're Asian. It's because they do it. They don't have furniture. I mean, who decided this furniture should be this high? What if I was to saw off the legs and make it shorter? You'd have better range of motion, and you have to use more strength. Somebody created this, just like they created Cheese Whiz. Doesn't mean you have to eat it, right? You don't have to eat it. You don't have to sit in these chairs if you don't want. And if you're going to sit in them, at least uncross and cross your legs and move around and fidget. The worst thing that we've ever done to children is to have children tell them, don't fidget. Don't fidget. It's like, what? Fidgeting is one of the best things in the world for you. That makes sense? How are we doing on time? 2.5 hours left? 5 minutes. Oh my gosh. Okay, the most important thing. When I wrote my first book, The Pillars of Health, I was taking notes on, all my what I've done forever, and luckily I had it all. I just had to put it all together. But it was the last 2 chapters in the book that's the most important thing that I stand for. And the last 2 chapters were on love and compassion. We live in a world that's filled with hatred, anger, jealousy, rage, extreme violence. I mean, you just have to turn on the news, watch it, and read any newspaper, and you're inundated with it. As soon as you turn on the news, read a newspaper, you see it, it's everywhere. And the only counter to all those horrible things, because those are worse than the pollution in the air, the food, the water, because you're seeing and feeling them all day long. But the only counter to that, to counter it, is love and compassion. Because when you start thinking negative thoughts and seeing negative thoughts and negative experiences, it affects you. And if you don't think it affects you, this is a celluloid screen, and when you watch a scary movie, my question is, how come your heart's racing? How come your fists are clenching up? There's nothing here. The boogeyman's not here, but you think the boogeyman's there. So your body thinks the boogeyman's here. And here's the main lesson. Get this and you'll get everything. Your body doesn't know what's real and what's not. But when it gets scared from the boogeyman, there's an endocrine release. Oh my God. Drugs are being released. Hormones are being released for no reason at all. You're supposed to run from that saber-toothed tiger once or twice a year. Now you're having this adrenaline response 5, 6, 7, 10 times a day. Not healthy for you at all, especially for your brain, the hippocampus region that's responsible for memory. My God, that little hippocampus region gets eaten away by cortisol. It just starts shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. That's memory and creativity. You look at soldiers who've been exposed to the stress. They can't think anymore. They can't be creative. So you need to do everything you can to avoid anger and hostility. And basically that means avoid people, right? Well, no. But just remember this. Start this way. I'd love to do a whole lecture on this, but we don't have the time. But just start this way. Watch your words. I don't use the H-A-T-E word. It's not part of my vocabulary. The K-I-L-L word. I'd have clients come in and use those words, and I was shocked. I was like, wow, I never use those words. You know, when you squeeze an orange, what comes out is orange juice because that's what's in it. When you're upset and angry and what words come out, I'm sorry to say this, that's who you are. So be cautious of that. You don't want those words to come out because that's who you are now. Fill your life with love and compassion. Get rid of the media. Watch your vocabulary. Watch what you say. I've worked with abused women for 30 years, and more of those women have been hurt by the words from their husbands, their boyfriends, their fathers, uncles. Breaks you down. And then they're my clients, and they've had these tapes playing for 40 years. So be conscious of your words. Be conscious of the media that you allow yourself to see. Gangster rap. I mean, kids today, I was speaking at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. for 150 congressional people, and I said, hey, 12-year-old children still have baby teeth, and they believe in Santa Claus, and they're watching XXX pornography. They're listening to gangster rap. They're playing video games where you shoot people, have sex with prostitutes in a video game. And then you couple that with a nutrient-deficient diet, and you're surprised we got school shooters? That's your recipe. That's how you do it. So you want to do everything be cautious. Like people freak out when I'm in a car and I don't listen to the radio. I was like, I like it quiet. I don't need to have all that stuff on. I don't need to watch the news. I turn on my computer, my phone. I see the basics news, so I know if the world's still here or not. But I don't need to delve into that. Be cautious of people around you, what they say. If somebody says something to you repetitively that you don't like, say, hey, listen, I really don't want you to use that terminology around me. It's not comfortable for me. It hurts me. So be cautious of that, okay? Sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can tear your heart apart. So be conscious of that. What I do is I have my clients write affirmations almost all the time, positive things. I have everybody create a vision board. So get yourself just a blank piece of cardboard, go on Google Images and punch in meditation, relaxation, veganism, love, compassion, and print those words out and put those up. And every day you should look at that. When I'm doing phone consult with clients and I've told them to get a vision board and they don't have it, I say, I'm looking at 7 vision boards right now and you have none. I said, that's not a good thing because your environment is what creates you. So be very conscious of that. Okay. So watch those words, watch what energy you're around yourself with. And here's the most important thing. When you're with people and they're mean to you, you have no idea what their past was. So if somebody had heart disease, you wouldn't recommend saturated fat and cholesterol and tobacco because that'd kill them. That's what created it. Well, when somebody's mean to you, you don't go back to them with anger. You give them love and compassion because you don't know why they're that way. The women that I've worked with that have been beaten and abused, I understand why they're that way. So I have extra compassion to them. I want to give them a reference of somebody loving and kind because when they leave, they take that reference with them. And so the rest of their life, they're going to remember somebody did something kind for them. So just try to think in terms of that. We think, what could I do to make the world better? When I meet somebody, I want to make sure every interaction I have with that person, they're left with something good. That makes sense? Okay. Livingwithharmony.org. That's my animal sanctuary site. The site you saw me training Ellen, that's johnpierre.com. I don't really use that site too much anymore, but it's just because Ellen did a really good video. You know, she had expensive cameras. So I just leave that up because it's a nice video. No one's ever done any exercise videos before for me, so they did that. And my email, so you can have it, is foods, F-O-O-D-S, like Sam, for, F-O-R, life, L-I-F-E, J-P at Yahoo. So it's foods for life, JP at Yahoo. I'm right here in Colorado, so I'm right in Boulder. So I do private sessions all the time. I'm trying to open an animal sanctuary here, so I'm trying to get land. I have 17 animals now, but just in a small townhouse. So, yeah. Don't want to know. You go in there and it's like tumbleweeds going across with the fur and stuff. So anyway, this is really a great conference. I really love what they've done here. They've always put on such a great conference, and I love it. I hope it continues to grow. I know there's a lot of people watching at home, but this is a great conference. So my hat's off to everybody here for coming, and it was nice to be here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Very good.